Look, I know it is the end of a day and a half of intense. I know. Good morning. No, no, ma'am. No, sir. Good morning. Look, I know you've had a lot of data. I know you've had some coffee. I know lunch is coming, but I want you to hang with me despite my terrible voice. I promise I'm going to make this next 20 minutes worth it. My name is Matthew Daniel. I'm very happy to be here with you. I have to tell you, my why for coming to Guild or being at Guild, there are three big reasons. Number one, it wasn't a choice. I was acquired. And I ended up at Guild. And like any good learning and talent development person, I said, what the hell am I supposed to do with college degrees when I need to solve this quarter's problems? And had a little bit of a who moved my cheese program because I had, as most learning professionals, deeply bought into this concept of today's problems, performance support, how are we going to impact this quarter's objectives. I worked at Capital One for 6 years. There was a lot of thinking about that. And I spent my first 6 weeks having a lot of conversations, which leads me to point number two. What I saw when I got through the door was the opportunity that was being extended to people through degrees. I had to put my own experience and my own belief set on the shelf. About 6 weeks in, I was trying to decide, was I going to stay or was I not? And I had a talk with Rachel. I was like, Rachel, hey, I love all of this upskill, reskill thing. There are two things I'm concerned about. Number one, we have to think differently than college degrees. How are we going to help people get to results sooner? And she said, Matthew, we're working on it. We're building a company. Hold on just a second. And I said, would you just go back to the previous slide? And so I said, okay, I'll hang out. She said, we can't compromise on getting people access to jobs. And those credentials get people to jobs. So come along with our thinking, Matthew. Okay, so I come from a family in rural Arkansas. I'm the oldest of four. I'm the only college graduate. My brothers and sisters have great jobs. They're tradespeople. They take care of their family. They have a good, sustaining life wage, but they don't have choices. They don't have options. And my life abounds with options as a result of the credentials that I have and the experience that I've been able to gain. And that's made me very focused at Guild about how we serve populations, because do you know what is near my family in Arkansas? A Walmart and a Taco Bell are places where people can go and gain access through folks like us. I went to Dollywood last week. Hershend is a partner of ours, and my daughter loves Dolly Partner. She calls her Dolly Partner. And so we went to Dollywood. And of course, everybody at the park was going to hear from me, hey, did you know that you can get access to a college degree? And one of my favorite moments was my wife came back with Dippin' Dots for our daughter. And I said, yeah, they got the flavor you wanted. And she said, hey, I talked to him about Guild. And I was like, all right. And she said, he does know about it. He isn't enrolled yet. But Matthew, this is what he said. Sorry, people in these parts don't have things like that. And that's why I stayed in this company, is because I started looking at the data shortly after I got here at Walmart about urban versus rural versus suburban, and I saw the potential impact across the footprint that could be had, and I thought of my family. Here's the third reason that I'm still here, and I'm grateful that Guild kept me instead of the other way around, which is that I had spent the previous 16 years of my career making decisions about which learners got access to which systems and which learning catalogs. I was responsible for making decisions. I didn't see it then. It's really clear to me now that we were using the exempt versus non-exempt line to make decisions about who got access to what. And we justified in our minds the decision that we were making around budget. But ultimately, when I look back at the decisions that I made and that I advised all those companies on that you heard out a moment ago, I was reinforcing a systemic bias that existed between folks who had been underprivileged and underserved and didn't see it. And so my time at Guild is focused on how do we create opportunity for others? And not just in the stance of an education and access to it, but how do we help them realize? That was the second thing I talked to Rachel about when I joined, is like, how are we going to get people jobs on the other side of this? How will we create opportunities? And she said, Matthew, we're working on it. We're going to do it. Give us a little bit of time. So I was antsy for my first year, working on some other things. And then the time came to stand up the Career Mobility COE. I am surrounded, they're not here today, but I am surrounded by a number of other folks who go deep on these topics. And what we started just about a year and a half ago was going deep on the research. And what we wanted to answer was, how are others creating mobility for the front line? And so the good news is we found 100, 125, 150 articles, and we saw podcasts, and we thought, great, we're going to dive into it. And I have to tell you, on the other end of all of that literature research, and I went and talked to all of those leaders who had been known for their mobility programs, and I started asking questions. And the main question I came back to was, but how are you doing it for frontline folks? And in the 125 articles that we found, do you know how many focused on the front line? One. Much like me, there is a community of leaders who is working on getting access to education and privilege, but unfortunately, it's already going to many folks who have access to education and privilege. So what I'm going to share with you in the 13 minutes and 44 seconds that I have left, don't worry, it's almost over, is the beginning of a framework. Now, we have a big research paper that'll be coming out next quarter our team is working on to make sure that nobody else says, how do we do mobility for the front line? And there's not an answer. There will be an answer. We will declare what the answer is, and you all are the partners that are helping us demonstrate what is capable of being done and the results on the other side of it. So I'm going to focus on, it's in the framework, but really what we're going to get to is 10 practices. Because at the end of the day, if you can't go do something, then we've all looked really nice, sat across from the table, said hello, done some good networking and drinking, and we're not creating change in the world. And I signed up to create change in the world. So let's talk about how we do that. Number one, let's focus on, there it is. Let's focus on career pathways. So I've heard much from many of you about skills. When I was at Capital One, I led a lot of efforts around skills. I tried it in LMS. I tried it in the HRIS. I tried it in my LXP. I was down with every possible way that I could get to skills, and we spent years on it. And on the other end of it, we didn't have much to show for it because the entire skills ontology had changed in the time that we're doing it. Now, I'm going to echo what Josh Bersin said, which is skills are important, and we should do that body of work. And also, our frontline employees who are leaving our organizations can't afford to wait for the moment 3 years from now when we figure out the entirety of our skill strategy. We can get there faster by hot-wiring this thing with pathways. You heard Natalie reference it. What we've looked at is across the footprint of employers and prospective employers, we see that about 70% of job postings can be covered by about 55 roles that we have put into about 10 to 12 pathways. So how do we make sure then that we get those pathways available and then we get a real focus on gateway jobs? Look, it is not enough to put it on a page and say, here's where it is. If there are not opportunities for people to go to, and frankly, I wrote a piece on this last week for talent management. Those frontline roles or those early career roles are reserved for the people you're recruiting from campus programs. They're not accessible to your existing employees. Can we camp there for a minute? Just want you to reflect on that. I know they're important. I know there are many leaders in your organizations who came through those campus programs. Hell, you may have come through one of those campus programs. But the question is, it's 2022, the world is inequitable, we see it, and will we continue to reinforce those norms, or will we consider alternatives where we create more opportunities for others? How do we make sure that the skilling opportunities we have are equitable? Many of you have seen this. We call it our Metro Map. It's an example of a pathway. Some of our partners in the room are on it. We just so you all know, we circulate in the right programs and partners on these. But what we think of is that there has to be not this linear path, the idea that people are just gonna be promoted all the way through, that's important. But on average, most companies are doing 8 to 10% promotions per year. If you're in a really hot organization, maybe you're doing 12 to 15%. So we're gonna have to consider alternative means of getting people access to jobs today, access to skilling today, pulling it together, giving options, right? Because this is really important. One of the things that happens when we bring up this slide is that folks are like, great, so we're gonna have 20 programs and we're gonna go deep on just those. And that doesn't really work. We've gotta give our employees options. We've gotta let them see, but we've gotta give them focus to the places where jobs are available for the future. We've gotta do this mix of optionality and focus, but these are the kinds of pathways. One of the things we say a lot, I don't know if Allison's still in the room, but she wrote about this, that often what we see is a lot of frontline employees wanna pursue HR jobs. Why is it that we see that so often? Because if you're in a distributed location, the representation of the corporate office that you interact with is HR. You want to be what you can see. You can only be what you can see. And so they go after those things. And so how do we paint a picture with career pathways that make sure that we make it available for folks to make progress on this in a shorter time, right? Not years of analysis, but how do we roll these things out in the course of a few weeks or months, not years? The second thing, and this is really, if I can leave you with this, it came up yesterday, but if there's one thing I hope that you remember from this talk, is that it doesn't matter what skills you give to everyone in your organization, and it doesn't matter how good your matching technology is from one to the other. If employees themselves do not believe that they can get that next thing, it does not matter. There are people with PhDs sitting in call centers who have not moved because no one has said, here's what's next. No one has said, this is who you are next. Here's where we go. So if you're an employer and you're thinking, Matthew, how do I create mobility soon? You get in front of your learners access to guidance about how to get a resume ready. Look, folks, we can't punish. You have people who've worked for you for years. What they haven't been doing is interviewing at other companies. Guess what they're not good at? Resumes. Guess what they're not doing? Interview questions. They don't know how to storytell. Are you going to penalize those folks versus the outside employees who've got lots of rotations, interviewing for lots of jobs? Maybe you are now. So don't overcomplicate this. Stand up a page, get it available. Please don't put it in your LMS, but get a resource available. There you are. Please don't put it layered away. Get it available to them. We do this by getting in front of learners. We want to encourage you, if you're not using Guild for this yet, get in front of learners with the support that they need. Not only do they need to see themselves, build that occupational identity for that next job, but they've got to build the social capital, the relationships. Look, we drink our own champagne at Guild. Guess what we do? We host opportunity events where we help people who are reskilling through Guild programs meet with leaders from other departments. They get to hear about the jobs that are available elsewhere. They get to build relationships with people in other departments. This is what builds the kind of social capital that's needed to make a move. It does not matter how much you skill if you do not empower your workers with that next belief of where they can go. This is a visual that we use to just talk about the job process, getting that next job. It's not, we imagine a lot of times that mobility is a function of the moment of skills acquisition, as in going into a program, and the moment of applying for a job. But this experience is far more complicated. There's some research that came out of Cornell that talked about how people often will apply for jobs just to test the water up in career exploration to figure out, where can I go? What can I do? What are they looking for? It is a long journey, and people need support through that entire process. Number 3 is a cultural shift. This is about internal marketing. Look, many of you have probably done HR initiatives where you're really proud. You stood up the system. You put tons of money and effort into launching it, and nobody comes. And that is because there's not the awareness built around it. Look, if we build really pretty pathways and we launch Guild, or whatever your talent development solution is, and we don't build the right level of internal marketing around that thing to make sure that the right people have access, that the right people see it. And guess what? Your frontline workers aren't sitting behind their computers waiting for your next communication. They got other things going on in their world. How will you get in front of those learners with the right opportunity at the right time? And how will you make it a part of your employer brand? If you're doing this, do not let your comms and PR people hold back. Go all in. It is your brand. It is the kind of talent you want to bring in. It's what you hope that people see. I love the work that some of our partners have done to make it so loud, so proud. The work that I don't see the Walmart team, there you are. The work that the Walmart team has done that says, I want to make sure I get the phrase right, a path for everyone. It's a hashtag that they're using on LinkedIn and on other platforms to make sure that Walmart, it's a place you can come and get access to opportunities. Number 4 is this, reducing friction. Now, here's what I want to say about this. Another thing I hope that you will remember is in HR, we tend to start with the friction. We stand up our initiatives as if they're 2-year initiatives. We're going to change this thing. There's a reason this is number 4, because this thing can happen in parallel, reducing friction by doing things really practically like an internal sourcing team. Kamari, Dr. Yule, and the team at Rock have done a phenomenal job of wrapping some services around this. And what they're seeing is the folks, this comes from a Talent Development Hot Seat podcast that she did recently. They went from 14% placement to 82% placement on the other end because they had internal sourcing teams who were picking up the phone and calling those folks as they're going through rescheduling programs to make sure that they're having that impact. How do you use systems to make sure that your recruiters know about the talent, that the decision makers, your hiring managers know about that talent? So really practical, what are the things that I can do to go do that? Number 5 is this. Last 2 practices, measuring and managing to mobility outcomes. Look, I love a good heartstring story like the rest of you. I cried, I know, 5 times yesterday morning. I cry all the time. It's what I do. But you got CFOs, and you've got shareholders. And your ability to tell the story, look, I'm going to say it to you this way. Josh covered the data yesterday about the cliff that exists because of a decline in birth rates in 2008. We also see that same data in college enrollments. We already were expecting a cliff 2025 to 2029. And that cliff started far earlier. And so if you're not paying attention to it because you're solving this quarter's pain points, let me clearly say to you, the crisis that we have felt, it does not matter what recession we might face in the coming months. The tight talent market that we have in a number of areas is going nowhere for the next decade. So we have to, the organizations that build the infrastructure to develop their own talent, to make sure that the gateway and entry-level jobs are available for their own talent, are the organizations that I want to say to you will survive. It does not matter how good your talent acquisition engine is, there will be a point that the cost of bringing in talent will exceed what is readily available to your organization to continue to stay profitable. So building out the infrastructure, both making sure the jobs are available, that the development is happening, that those connection points are happening, is critical to making sure that the future stands. Now here it is. This is Matthew's wrap up. I'm going to say this and we're done. This is the charge I give at the end of every talk. Whether you're an academic leader or an HR leader or you're working in one of the partnerships that we have, none of those jobs did we sign up for because we thought to ourselves, I love process. Nobody said, I love an LMS, give me Workday all day long. Nobody says that. Nobody thinks to themselves, e-learning, let's go develop and change the world with that, right? That's not what we thought when we took these jobs. We had experiences with HR professionals many times that were terrible. And what we thought to ourselves is we could do it better. We would get in a place of authority, a position where we could make the world better, that we would do the work. And I want to encourage you that what you've heard over the past day and a half, it's not just inspirational and exciting, it is a moment. Because in this room, you represent millions of people who have alternative futures based on the decisions that you make. I don't just mean guild, I mean policies. I mean processes. I mean making yourself available to mentor and spend time with people. I mean we can have an impact. And at the end of the day, if on my tombstone they write, Matthew helped frontline workers get access to more jobs, I will have lived a good life. It will have been enough. And I want to ask you to go about doing the work, to remember why it is that you signed up for it, to think about the one or two ways that you can have an impact on the lives of others. And I want to ask you to do that much. Do it now. Have an impact on others. Go change the world and make it better. Let's make opportunities for our workers. Thank you guys so much.